Hello, I'm Don Goldman, the Chief Scientific Officer Emeritus at IHI and an infectious disease epidemiologist at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School. The ECHO team has asked me to put together a series of short videos on COVID-19, and this is the first one, and today we'll be talking about the vaccines. But first of all, thank you and the other staff at your facility for taking care of your residents and doing your best to protect them and yourselves from COVID. I know this is really stressful work and that you're way too busy to spend a lot of time watching videos. So I'll try to be really brief and not spend much time on information you probably already know. Well, here's a roadmap of what we're going to be covering today. If I can just share my screen with you. You don't need to go through all this now because I'm going to be covering it as we go through the video, but I want to give you a sense of where we're going to be going. Here's a important part of this talk. I think you need to have, or at least I recommend that you have a simple understanding of the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. It's what we call a RNA virus because its genetic code, its genes, are encoded in RNA, which, as you may remember from biology class, is ribonucleic acid. These RNA genes direct the production of proteins that stick out on the surface of the virus. That's what you see in this ubiquitous and frankly really scary cartoon. But the most important protein is the spike protein that you see in the illustration. That's a model that folks have put together to show the protein on the surface of the virus. This spike protein helps the virus stick to and enter your body's respiratory cells. It's the main target of vaccines because the antibodies that vaccines help us to produce attach to that spike and prevent the virus from entering cells. Now, I also want to mention this is a really fragile virus that can be killed quickly with alcohol, disinfectants, or even soap and water. Now, I have to say that I'm in awe of the scientists who have so rapidly developed vaccines against COVID. I've never seen anything remotely like this in my long career. These extraordinary advances were made possible because scientists now can characterize the entire genetic code of a virus really quickly. And no matter what you may think about China's COVID response, Chinese scientists made the genetic code available to the entire world really quickly. A second advantage scientists have had is the availability of some novel vaccine technologies. We call these platforms that can produce potential vaccines within weeks once the genetic code is known. And finally, governments have stepped up and provided unprecedented funding to the companies that have made the promising vaccine candidates. So here we are with literally scores of vaccines in development, some of which are being approved as I speak and soon will be distributed in the United States and other countries. I won't try to review all of these vaccines, but I do want you to understand the leading candidates so you'll be more comfortable being vaccinated and also be able to explain the vaccines to your residents and to their families. First, let's talk about the Pfizer-BioNTech and the Moderna vaccines. By the time you hear this video, these are the two vaccines that probably will be approved by the FDA. Both are messenger RNA vaccines. Messenger RNA literally is the genetic messenger that targets the immune cells, especially antibody-producing cells, and instructs them to make antibody against that spike protein that, as you'll recall, is necessary for the virus to invade your cells. Both vaccines appear to be highly effective in preventing COVID, about 95% actually in clinical trials. Moderna actually says its vaccine is virtually completely protective against severe disease. Almost none of the vaccines we use today, including the flu vaccine, are that effective. It's incredible, really. Elderly people and people with underlying conditions were included in these trials, and the vaccine seems to be effective in them as well, though most of the volunteers, as you know, were younger and healthier. I do need to tell you that there are no other messenger RNA vaccines that have been approved for human use, though several have been in development for diseases like Ebola. This may give you pause, so I'll come back to this issue in a minute when we talk about vaccine safety. The vaccines, especially Pfizer vaccine, have to be stored in incredibly super cold conditions, which will make distribution a challenge. I should also mention a couple of other highly publicized vaccines, especially the AstraZeneca vaccine. This vaccine also uses a production platform that is relatively new and hasn't been used in any approved vaccine so far in the United States. This class of vaccine uses a virus called adenovirus that causes colds and other respiratory illnesses. But the adenovirus vaccine used in the COVID vaccines does not seem to cause disease in humans. It's basically a chimpanzee virus, if you want to know. Basically, the genetic code for stimulating an immune response hitches a ride on the adenovirus, which delivers it to the human immune system. Unfortunately, AstraZeneca pretty much botched its announcement as it tried to explain why a full dose of vaccine was 70% effective, while half the dose was more effective, 90% effective. That half dose, it turns out, was delivered due to mathematical errors. So you can see why it's caused some confusion. But the virtue of the vaccine is it's easy to produce in massive quantities, it's relatively inexpensive, and it doesn't have those stringent storage conditions that we see with Pfizer and to some extent Moderna vaccines. By the way, you also may have heard about the Russian Sputnik 5 vaccine, clever name there, which uses an adenovirus platform, but I have less confidence in this vaccine because reliable information is just so hard to come by. You also may have heard about a Chinese candidate vaccine that's really traditional. It's just a killed whole virus vaccine, just like the influenza vaccine. I wish I could give you reliable data on the clinical trials in China, Brazil, and other countries, but I'm still waiting to see data that I trust. Just wanted to keep you up to date as much as I can on these other candidates. So we seem to have some very effective vaccine, but you're asking, are they safe? Apart from the kinds of symptoms we see with the flu vaccine, sore arms, aches, pains, headache, feeling under the weather for a day or so, there have been no documented major side effects. Now, to be honest, these vaccines have been tested in thousands, not hundreds of thousands or millions of people. So we'll need to follow people who have been vaccinated really carefully to be sure there are no uncommon but serious side effects. You just need to realize that sometimes there are surprises when a new vaccine is widely distributed. My own opinion, based on what I know now, is that the risks and benefits are very heavily on the side of benefit. And I would be right in line, first in line if I could, on the first day vaccine is available for elders like me. Now, I'm often asked about herd immunity. In other words, the percentage of the population that has either been infected by COVID or has received the vaccine. What is the percentage of that population that's been immunized or infected that will be necessary to almost stop transmission of the virus and end the pandemic? If the vaccine truly is 95% effective, we probably need to immunize as much as 70% of the population to snuff out and end the pandemic. In other words, infected people plus vaccinated people, at least 70, 80, perhaps percent to really end this nightmare. So how can we persuade people to accept the vaccine? Polls have repeatedly suggested that many people are reluctant to take this vaccine, fearing it's been rushed through the process and maybe it's been politicized in the process. Also, as you probably know, I hope you know, some of the hardest hit segments of our population, people in underserved communities, particularly African Americans, have historical reasons to be distrustful and are maybe especially reluctant to be immunized. This isn't just an anti-vaxxer problem. We are going to need to have a really respectful dialogue with these folks, really listen carefully to their concerns, and then deliver a very clear public health message. Something that we've been lacking so far in the United States. One of the issues we will face in healthcare and in the population at large is whether the vaccine should be mandated. I don't have the time to get into this contentious issue, but we'll be happy to discuss it with you at another time. Well, the residents in your facilities have been put at the head of the line, given their high risk and the numerous outbreaks and the resulting mortality that have marked this epidemic, an experience with which you're well familiar. And as healthcare workers, you're also at the head of the line. There are going to be many challenges in distributing this vaccine and deciding who gets which approved vaccine and in what priority order. Right now, though, I have to tell you, there isn't enough vaccine even for all of the highest priority populations. In our pluralistic society, the states make the final call on priorities and distribution. And given the unprecedented nature of the current pandemic and the track record so far, we can expect many bumps in the road and a few flat tires. And remember, the current vaccines are going to require a booster dose in 3 to 4 weeks, which is going to further complicate distribution and administration. One final point. So far, experts are recommending that even if you've had documented COVID infection, you still should be immunized because vaccine may provide a better, more prolonged immune response, especially in people who weren't seriously ill with a virus. Well, that's about all I can cover today, and thank you for listening. Please get in touch with the ECHO team if you have any questions for me, and I hope you stay safe and blessings for the work you do.